I'm Amy. They told me it's just a reunion. But then I found out my sister's $80,000 party was paid for, with my trust fund. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. A choice. They left me off the guest list. They said I was too sensitive. They said Celine deserved it more. But what hurt more than being left out was realizing I was never really in. You ever felt like the one holding a family together, only to find out they were cutting you loose the whole time? Because that's what happened to me. I was stirring a pot of risotto in my small Seattle kitchen when the text came through. My phone buzzed once on the counter. Just one buzz, like it didn't carry weight, like it wasn't going to gut me. Kaylin. Hey, just a heads up. Guest list is tight. Hope you understand. I read it 3 times. I was standing there with a wooden spoon in my hand, steam fogging up my glasses, and I felt the floor shift under me. My brother. My only brother. His welcome back party. I wasn't invited. At first, I thought maybe he was joking. Kaylin had a dry sense of humor, sure, but this felt cold, final. Not even a sorry, not even a next time. Just hope you understand. The kind of text you send to someone you don't expect to be hurt. I put the spoon down, turned off the stove. I stared at that message like it might morph into something else if I waited long enough. Maybe he'd follow up. Maybe this was a mistake. It wasn't. I opened our chat history, years of it. Me cheering him on through boot camp, me sending care packages, me staying up late on patchy FaceTime calls from overseas, while he cried quietly and told me he wasn't sure he could handle another month. And now I was just off the list? I tapped call before I could overthink it. Not to him, to Dad. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, kiddo, what's going on? Kaylin texted me, I said, voice tight. I'm not invited to the party? There was a pause. Not long, just enough to let me know he'd already rehearsed the answer. Oh, Amy, he sighed. Don't make this a thing, okay? It's just a reunion. Just a reunion. That phrase made something inside me curl. I'm his sister, I said. How does that not qualify for a guest spot? It's Celine's planning it, Dad replied, brushing me off like lint. She's been working hard, budget, space. You know how it goes. Celine's planning it, I repeated, and somehow I didn't make the cut. You know how tight things are. She had to prioritize. Prioritize what? I said, trying to stay calm. The guy I sent Amazon gift cards to when he couldn't afford snacks in Kuwait is suddenly too important to include me? You're being dramatic, he snapped. It's one weekend. It's not like anyone's dying. I felt heat rush to my cheeks. Number just a sibling being erased. That's all. Amy, he said sharply, like I was being unreasonable. Please don't turn this into one of your things. Kaylin just got back. Let's keep this positive. Yeah, I muttered. Positive for everyone but me. He didn't respond. I could hear him breathing on the line, heavy, frustrated, like I was the difficult one. I gotta go, he finally said. We're doing a final walkthrough at the venue. Click. I stood there, phone still against my ear, even though the call was dead. I could still hear him in my head, though. Don't make this a thing. It's just a reunion. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't new. I'd been overlooked before, forgotten birthdays, left out of photos. The default assumption that I'd be fine with whatever decisions they made. I was the one who stayed local while everyone else scattered. The one who took Dad to appointments when he had back surgery. The one who showed up with flowers for Mom on Mother's Day when no one else remembered. I even designed Kaylin's deployment banner from scratch, free of charge, and drove to get it printed the night before he left. But when it came time to welcome him home, I was excess baggage. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall, that numb silence spreading in my chest. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my laptop, went to a travel site, and typed in one word. Escape. Flights out of Seattle popped up. Hawaii, too humid. Miami, too crowded. Then I saw it. Colorado, Breckenridge, snow-covered cabins, mountains like watercolor paintings, fireplaces crackling in silence. I didn't even blink. I booked it. First-class flight, slopeside cabin, ski lessons, all of it. If I wasn't good enough to be on the guest list, then I was damn sure going to be somewhere better. I closed the laptop, feeling the tightness in my chest loosen just a bit. I didn't need their stage. I'd build my own. I opened the flight booking page, but it wasn't just about skipping a party anymore. It was about reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd let them chip away at for years. My worth. By the time I went to bed that night, the reservation was confirmed and my suitcase was halfway packed. I hadn't even told anyone I wasn't going. I figured they'd notice eventually, or maybe they wouldn't. That thought stung more than I expected. The next morning, I woke up early, not from an alarm, but from that uneasy pulse under the skin, like my body knew something was off. I reached for my phone, half dreading what I'd see, and there it was. A message from my mom. Delora. Sweetheart, I know you're upset. I'll make sure Celine saves you a slice of cake. That one sentence sat on my screen like a paper cut to the heart. Short, soft, and somehow sharper than anything Dad said. I stared at it, waiting for something more. Acknowledgement, regret. But no, just a cake slice. As if a sliver of sugar could patch the hole in my chest. I didn't respond. That had always been her way. Keep things light, pretty, manageable. Don't stir the pot, Amy, she used to say. Don't ruin the moment. She never wanted conflict, just harmony, even if it was fake. Especially if it was fake. I tossed on a hoodie and headed down the street to Brew Haven, the local cafe where I usually worked on design drafts. The cold morning air bit at my cheeks, and the wind carried a faint metallic scent, like rain had passed through steel. I wasn't hungry, but I ordered a black coffee anyway, something hot to wrap my hands around. I took a window seat, hoping for quiet. But quiet wasn't what I got. 2 tables away, I heard a voice I knew all too well. Bria, my cousin, loud, always half-performing. Her laugh was sharp, almost practiced. I'm telling you, Drex, this party is insane, she said. Celine went all out. 80 grand, easy. I stopped mid-sip. My fingers tightened around the cup. Wait, Drex said. How'd she even afford that? Her job doesn't cover that kind of spending. Bria chuckled. I heard, don't quote me, but I heard she used someone's trust fund, one of the family accounts. Guess she figured they'd never notice. My pulse roared in my ears. They couldn't be talking about me. That couldn't be what she meant. But it made too much sense. I stood up too fast. My coffee sloshed, but I didn't care. My legs felt heavy as I walked out of the cafe, the bell over the door jangling like a warning bell in my chest. As I made my way home, the pieces started to click. Slow, bitter clicks. I remembered Grandpa's voice when I was 12, telling me, "This is for your future, kiddo. College, maybe a down payment one day. Don't let anyone touch it." And my parents agreeing, promising it was safe, untouched, mine. I never touched it. Not even when I was laid off 2 years ago and struggling to pay rent. I toughed it out, freelance gig after freelance gig, because I believed them. Now I wasn't so sure. Back in my apartment, I threw off my coat and opened my laptop. My hands were trembling as I logged into my bank account tied to the trust. Everything looked normal on the surface. No big deductions, no red flags. But I clicked into the access logs, and something strange popped up. A login from a Portland IP address. 3 weeks ago. That was when Celine started planning the party. That was when Dad started acting cagey on the phone. My chest tightened. A different kind of ache than before. Something deeper. Not just rejection, violation. I closed my eyes and took a breath, but it didn't help. If they took from me, if they used what was mine, and didn't even have the decency to include me in the celebration, I opened my notes app, began writing down the date of the login, the IP, the time. Then I whispered, barely audible even to myself, If they touched it, I swear. I didn't need more confirmation. But I was about to get it anyway. Still seated at my desk, I heard the familiar chime of a new email. The subject line stared back at me like it knew exactly what kind of damage it carried. Authorized withdrawal alert. I hesitated for a second, just one, and then clicked. There it was. Plain as day. A transaction processed under Morton Faulkner's name. $80,000. Removed from my trust account. Not pending, not requested. Already gone. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I'd misread it. Maybe it was a statement, or a tax summary, or something else. Anything else. But the amount was right. The date was 3 days ago, and the name, his name, was at the bottom of the authorization field. My hands went cold. I reread it once, twice, a third time. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. They hadn't just left me out of a party. They'd taken from me, and they hadn't said a word. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My body was still, but my brain was in chaos. Every beat of my heart thudded against my ribs like it was trying to get out. I couldn't sit still anymore. I stood up, paced once, then sat down again. I needed more. I needed to know when they decided to do this. How far back did it go? I clicked back into the account settings and pulled up the login history. There it was. A session logged in from a Portland IP address. 3 weeks ago. Accessed the account, reviewed financial documents, then logged out 23 minutes later. My parents' house. That was their IP. The day lined up with the first time Celine had mentioned the welcome party on her socials. A whole mood board post with captions like, "When it's done right, it doesn't come cheap." My throat tightened. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a paperwork mix-up. It was a plan, a deliberate decision, a betrayal orchestrated by the people who were supposed to protect me. Dad didn't just know, he signed it. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times I bit my tongue to keep the peace. I remembered when Celine missed Mom's surgery and I covered for her, when Kaylin borrowed money just until Friday and I never saw a dime. I remembered standing in the rain outside the hospital that night, bringing my mom her coat, and Dad patting my shoulder like I was the reliable one. And that's what they counted on, wasn't it? That I'd always show up, always be reasonable, always understand. I pushed the chair back and stood up again, this time with purpose. I needed to breathe, but nothing about the air in my apartment was helping. I walked to the window, stared out at the gray Seattle skyline. I wasn't crying. That surprised me. Instead, I felt this strange clarity, like the fog had finally lifted. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. I was the quiet one, the easy one, the one they could cut out of the photos but still call when the pipes burst. I turned away from the window and went back to my desk. If they were going to treat me like I didn't matter, they were about to find out what happened when I finally believed them. I opened a blank document, began typing. Date of access, time, IP location, authorization log, screenshot attachments, notes, folders. This wasn't about throwing a tantrum. This was about tracking the truth. They wanted silence. They could have it. But I'd be the one writing it. And right when I thought it couldn't get worse, Elowen called. I almost didn't answer. I was mid-scroll through my document, adding timestamps and file names, trying to stay numb enough to keep moving. But when her name flashed across my screen, I paused. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just another check-in. I swiped to answer. "Hey," I said, my voice already tired. She didn't waste time. "Amy, I wasn't going to say anything, but after what you told me, you need to know." I sat upright. "Know what?" "I was at the house a couple of weeks ago," she said. "Dad was in the kitchen, talking to Celine and Mom. I don't think they realized I was around the corner." She paused. I could hear the background hum of a running car, muffled traffic. She was probably parked somewhere private. "He said, and I remember it exactly, he said, 'Amy doesn't need it. Celine does. Some kids are just more worth the money.'" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She added softly, "It wasn't a slip. It sounded settled, like something he's believed for a long time. My mouth felt dry, but I couldn't swallow. Those weren't just words. That wasn't a mistake. That was a worldview, and I'd been orbiting it my entire life, hoping one day I'd earn a closer seat. He meant it, I finally whispered. Elowen didn't disagree. The silence stretched between us. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like we were both watching something sacred snap in real time. She cleared her throat. And it's a mess over here. Celine's freaking out. One of the caterers bailed. The decor vendor is an hour late, and Morton's been barking at everyone. Apparently, Celine changed the menu last minute and forgot to confirm. Now no one knows what's going on. I leaned back against the couch, eyes closed. Of course she did. And no one's stepping in to fix it, she added. They keep asking where you are. I almost laughed. Where I am, like they didn't actively uninvite me? You know how this family works. Everyone wants the calm voice in the storm, but they don't want to give her a seat at the table. I stared at the ceiling. I used to be the one who fixed things, who coordinated the group chats, called the vendors, rewrote speeches the night before an event. I was the one who stayed late, cleaned up when others left, made sure Mom had her meds and Dad had his coat. And now I was the villain, the ghost. Or maybe I always was, just useful until I wasn't. They never protected me, I said quietly. They just drained me dry and called it love. There was no fight left in my tone, just a kind of tired certainty I'd never known before. They don't even realize what they lost, I added. No, Elowen said, but they're about to. We ended the call shortly after. She sounded uneasy, caught in the crossfire, but I knew her well enough to recognize her loyalty. She wouldn't say more than she had to, but she'd say what mattered. The room was silent again, but it felt different now, like the kind of quiet that comes right before the storm breaks. I stood up and looked out the window. The city moved below me, indifferent, fast, alive. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. They weren't losing me. They already had. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and exhaled the last thread of guilt I'd been carrying. I didn't want revenge, but the truth deserved a voice, and it was about to get one. So when Dad called again, blaming me for the chaos, I was ready. The phone buzzed on the table, his name lighting up the screen like it always did when something needed cleaning up. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Hello? His voice was clipped, already frayed at the edges. If you had just come, maybe Celine wouldn't be falling apart right now. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted him to sit in that silence for a moment. He kept going, filling the void the way he always did when he was cornered. She's overwhelmed, Amy. The caterers are late, the sound system's a mess, and your mother is trying to keep things from spiraling. You know how Celine gets. Maybe if you had been there... Stop, I said finally. He went quiet. You're blaming me for the mess you all made. He sighed. That long, theatrical sigh that said, here we go again. This is a family, Amy. Then stop acting like I'm not in it. That shut him up. I almost hoped he'd yell, because then, at least, we'd be speaking the same language. But instead, he exhaled and offered his favorite line, the one he pulled out when he wanted to guilt me into folding. We all make sacrifices. Yours just look different. I didn't have the energy to decode that. Not today. You made a decision without me. You used my trust. You cut me out. Don't expect me to be your solution now. I didn't know it would matter this much to you, he muttered. It was like hearing a stranger say my name. I hung up before I said something that would make me feel ashamed later. Not 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, a message. I half expected another passive-aggressive note from Mom, but it was from Celine. Celine, I thought you didn't care about money. You always acted like you were above all this. I needed it more than you. I read it twice, slowly. No apology, no regret, Just that slippery, hollow justification people like her used when they crossed the line and didn't want to own it. I needed it more than you. It was the kind of sentence that told me everything I ever needed to know about how she viewed me. My boundaries were optional, my resources reallocatable, and my silence expected. I put the phone down gently on the table, as if the act of not throwing it was some kind of grace. I sat at my desk, opened a new email draft, but halfway through typing "to whom it may concern," I stopped. Number not yet. I closed the tab and opened my notes instead. Typed, "If they push one more inch, I'll burn the whole illusion down." I leaned back in my chair and stared at that line like it was a mirror. Calm, final, not a threat, just a promise. The weight in my chest didn't disappear, but it shifted. It wasn't grief anymore, it was precision. I picked up my phone again and sent one message to Elowen. Me. Save everything. Screenshots, dates, anything you hear. There was no need to explain. She'd get it. I set the phone down, exhaled slowly. Not revenge, just readiness. And the moment I hit block on all their numbers, something in me unlocked. The silence that followed wasn't eerie. It was clean, sharp, even. Like walking out of a room full of shouting and realizing you'd forgotten what your own thoughts sounded like. I opened my messages one last time. Dad, Celine, Mom, even Bria. One by one, I pressed and held, hovered over the little option that used to feel too final. Block, block, block. No more be the bigger person. No more just come for the cake. No more guilt wrapped in tradition and passive-aggressive pleasantries. It wasn't a tantrum. It was an act of preservation. I stood up, stretched my spine, and took a deep breath. The air in my apartment didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt still, like I could finally breathe all the way in. I booked a last-minute flight, one way to Colorado. The idea had lived quietly in the back of my mind all week, but now it had form. It wasn't an escape, it was a redirection. If they wouldn't make space for me, I'd make my own somewhere higher, colder, quieter. Packing took less time than I expected. I didn't bring much, just the essentials. My favorite sweater, sketch pad, a worn paperback I never finished. I deleted every voicemail from my dad, even the old ones I'd kept just in case. The cab ride to SeaTac was uneventful. For once, I didn't check my phone. There was no one left to wait for. As the plane lifted off the tarmac and pierced the cloud line, I caught my reflection in the window. I was smiling. It wasn't big, but it was real. Landing in Colorado, the air greeted me like a slap and a kiss. Brisk, clean, unapologetic. I liked that about it. At the lodge bar that evening, I took a seat near the fireplace with a hot cider and let the heat from the flames work its way through me. The clink of glasses, the murmur of voices, and the sound of a live acoustic guitar floated through the room. That's when I heard it. "Amy?" I turned and blinked. "Kira?" She was grinning, wide-eyed. "You haven't changed a bit." I laughed. "You're a liar, but I'll take it." We hugged like no time had passed, and suddenly the years between college and now felt paper thin. We caught up over a second drink. Kira was still in design, freelance now, working remotely out of Denver. She talked fast and laughed easily, and being around her felt like sliding into an old hoodie I forgot I still owned. "You always had this grounding energy," she said, nudging her glass toward me. "People leaned on you." "Yeah," I said quietly, "and I let them." She gave me a look. "Too much." I shrugged. "I thought it made me valuable." "You were always valuable, even when you weren't being their emotional first responder." She raised her glass again. "To not doing that anymore." We clinked. Later that night, wrapped in flannel and curled under a thick duvet, I lay in bed watching snow fall beyond the big window. The fireplace crackled softly in the corner, and my fingers curled around a mug of peppermint tea. I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel guilt. I felt whole. Then Bria posted, and all hell broke loose. I woke up to my phone buzzing like a fire alarm, screen flooded with DMs. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly flooding my inbox. Are you okay? Heard you were dealing with something? Your mom said you've been going through a rough patch. Rough patch? I sat up slowly, blinking against the morning light filtering through the mountain window, heart already pounding. And then I saw it. Bria's post. No name, no direct tags. Just a smug caption attached to a group photo from the party. Some people let jealousy poison their own bloodlines. Let them choke on the silence they created. Another cousin shared the post with a comment. So sad when family lashes out just to be noticed. Hope they get the help they need. A third, a friend of Celine's I think, retweeted it with a blunt take. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table, especially not the ones who set it on fire. They were talking about me. They didn't even bother to hide it. I wasn't surprised, but I was done pretending to be shocked. I opened my screenshots folder, clicked New Album, named it Receipts. One by one, I saved everything, every caption, every comment. I forwarded it all to Elowen. Me. Save this. We might need it. Then I opened Instagram, took a breath, and posted a photo from my cabin window, the mountains stretching wide and unapologetic under a silver sky. The caption was simple: peace isn't given. Sometimes you earn it by walking away from people who'd rather ruin you than apologize. No tags, no names, but anyone who needed to see it would know. The post started picking up likes within minutes. Old co-workers commented, "You've always carried yourself with grace." A college classmate wrote, "Some people can't handle accountability, so they weaponize stories." Even Uncle Mike chimed in, "Truth has a funny way of climbing out, huh? Proud of you, kid." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt accurate. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the narrative they tried to twist. They painted me as bitter, unstable, selfish, because it was easier than facing what they'd done. But now, the silence they depended on, I'd set it on fire. That afternoon, I was sipping tea in the lodge lounge when Elowen texted again. Elowen, Mom just messaged me. Celine's spiraling. Dad's furious. They're saying you ruined the party. I stared at the message for a long second. Me. They're about to find out what ruined really looks like. So I wrote the email that would end the silence and hit send. It wasn't dramatic. No fire in the fingertips. No music swelling in the background. Just a quiet click and the sound of my own breath, steady and calm for the first time in days. The message was addressed to the Trust's legal counsel, with every extended family member CC'd. A full list, no cherry-picking. Subject: unauthorized withdrawal from personal trust. Request for legal review. The body was short, sharp, surgical. On date, an $80,000 withdrawal was executed from my designated trust fund, originally created by my grandfather for my future use. This transaction was authorized under Morton Faulkner's name without my consent. Access logs from my banking portal confirm the account was viewed and modified from an IP address located at Morton and Delora Faulkner's residence in Portland, Oregon. I'm submitting this documentation for investigation. This is no longer a family matter. It is a legal one. Attached were the screenshots, every login, every timestamp, every digital fingerprint. No threats, no insults, just the truth, finally laid bare for everyone to see. And when I hit send, my hands didn't shake. I leaned back and let the silence fill the space between who I used to be and who I was finally becoming. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up like wildfire. Calls from numbers I recognized, calls I didn't. I didn't answer any of them. Then came a text from Elowen. Elowen, they're scrambling. I think Bria just left the party early. Celine's crying in the guest suite. Morton keeps saying you made this personal. Mom's sobbing about family destruction. It's chaos. I could picture it. Streamers half hanging, cold hors d'oeuvres sweating on glass trays. Faces twisted in panic, not guilt. They were more outraged about being exposed than about what they'd done. Good. I put my phone down and walked out to the cabin patio, wrapped in a thick shawl as snowflakes drifted lazily around me. Then came the email reply. From the trust advisor. Amy, thank you for your documentation. We are taking this seriously and will initiate a formal review process. Please do not respond to further personal inquiries regarding this issue. We'll handle it. It was so simple, so clean. It cut through months, years, of gaslighting and guilt like glass through paper. I whispered, they're finally going to be held accountable. Then I opened Instagram again and posted my final message. It was a photo of me standing on the Overlook Trail behind the lodge, hands in my coat pockets, mountains behind me, sky starting to darken with snow. The caption, "Silence isn't noble when it protects injustice." I didn't check the comments. I didn't need to. Later that night, I stepped outside again. The air was so crisp it stung a little when I breathed too deep, but I welcomed the bite. It reminded me I was still here. Still solid, still mine. I looked up at the stars and thought about the version of me who would have done anything to keep peace, who would have shown up at that party with a fake smile and a wrapped gift, pretending nothing was broken. That girl was gone. I didn't lose my family. I left the role they'd written for me and wrote my own. And in the morning, for the first time in years, I didn't reach for my phone. I reached for peace. The quiet wasn't unnerving. It was earned. I brewed my coffee, wrapped myself in a thick cardigan, and stepped out onto the snowy deck. The air held that early morning stillness only mountain towns know. Crisp, untouched, sacred. I sat in the Adirondack chair and watched the snow melt off the railing, steam rising where sunlight touched it. No calls, no pings, no drama. Just me, the smell of roasted beans, and the hush of a world not asking anything from me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't hoping they'd call. I wasn't waiting for the apology that never came. I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was done. That afternoon, Elowen sent a final update, one I hadn't asked for, but didn't mind reading. Elowen. Morton's golf group pulled his speaking spot. Word got around. Elowen. Celine's PR team dropped her after a sponsor backed out. Elowen. Mom sent a 5-minute voice message. I haven't listened to it. Figured you wouldn't either. She was right. I didn't open it. I just pressed delete. Some stories don't need a reply. Some doors stay closed. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. Later that week, while sipping tea at the Lodge Cafe, Kira slid a contract across the table. It's remote. Design work for a women-led housing nonprofit. They want someone who gets community and boundaries. I didn't hesitate. I'm in, I said. Not just for the job, but for the chance to build something that wasn't rooted in guilt or sacrifice, something that felt like mine. 2 days later, I packed up my apartment in Seattle. Most of it fit in boxes. A few items I tossed, and one photo I left behind. It was framed, faded a little at the edges. Me, Celine, and Kaylin at a birthday party when we were 10. I stared at our faces longer than I meant to. That girl deserved better, I whispered. I'm giving her that now. Denver wasn't a clean slate. I wasn't starting over. I was starting forward. The night before my move, I curled into bed with a journal and a pen I'd had since college. On the final page, I wrote, "They didn't break me. They just showed me who I was without them." I closed the book, slipped it into my suitcase, and stepped outside one last time. Snow crunched under my boots. The mountain stood behind me, steady as ever. The cabin lights flickered warm behind frosted windows. The world hadn't changed, but I had. This isn't a reunion story, it's a freedom story, and I'm finally home. You know, if you'd told me a year ago that I'd walk away from my own family, not in anger, but in clarity, I would have laughed and poured another cup of coffee, thinking I'd always be the one to fix things. But here's what I've learned. Silence doesn't make you noble. Self-sacrifice isn't love when it's demanded. And forgiveness doesn't mean handing people a shovel while they dig your worth into the ground. I didn't burn a bridge. I just stopped handing out bricks to people who never planned to build with me. So if you're watching this, And you've ever felt like the one holding it all together while no one held you. I see you. You're not selfish for choosing peace. You're not dramatic for asking to be treated fairly. You're not wrong for finally saying, enough. Maybe this isn't just my story, maybe it's yours too. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose peace over family? Have you ever walked away not because you wanted to, but because you finally had to? Let me know in the comments. Type 1 if this hit home, or drop the state or country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story's reaching. And hey, if you didn't like the video, that's okay too. Tell me why. I'm here for real stories, real conversations. If this video resonated with you, inspired you, or made you feel less alone, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories coming, more truth, more heart, and more reminders that sometimes walking away is the bravest step toward home. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.